Hello everyone, I'm making this video about photosynthesis. I'll be explaining the overview of the photosynthesis. Expect another video which explains the detailed steps of photosynthesis. So photosynthesis, you should know it by now or already. It's the process that happens in plants where plants use the sunlight to produce their own food. This is the equation of photosynthesis, where the plants get the CO2 from the atmosphere and the H2O from the roots, of course, and by the use of sunlight they create C6H12O6, which is glucose, and release back oxygen. Now this allows the plants to make their own food. Then they'll be using this food by cellular respiration or other processes. Okay, this makes the plants called autotrophs. Autotrophs are organisms that are able to make their own food and then use their own food. Heterotrophs, for example, us or animals, they cannot make their own food. That's why we have to search for food and eat the food, then do the other process, which is called cellular respiration. This process mostly happens in the leaves of the plant, which will contain the cells of the leaves will contain the special organelle called chloroplast. This is the structure of a chloroplast. So before we start to talk about the structure, the chloroplast has two membrane, an outer membrane, then an inner membrane, and inside it would have these disc-like structures called thylakoids stacked on top of each other. Each one is a thylakoid, and the whole group of the stack is called granum. The liquid around these is called the stroma, which is just fluid. Now what interests us is the thylakoid, which is the place of the first step of photosynthesis, which is the light reaction, and the stroma would be the place or where the second step of photosynthesis occurs, which is the Calvin cycle. Before we go to the two steps, let us talk about the sunlight that the chloroplast or the plants use. Now the sunlight comes, this is more physics, the sunlight comes in different wavelengths, and the wavelength or the frequency define which color is the sunlight. Now we have different wavelength, and only few part of the wavelength is what we call the visible light. The visible light is what we are able to see. If we have more frequency, that's UV light, X-rays, gamma rays, which is we can't see and usually are harmful. And less frequency, more wavelength light are the infrared, microwaves, and radio waves. Now what we care about is the visible light, and depending on the frequency or the wavelength, it defines the color of the light. Now the plants are green, and the chloroplast gives them, or they contain the pigment called chlorophyll, which gives them the green color. Why is that? When something looks green, it's because it's reflecting the green color, so it's not using the green color. So if I asked you which colors does photosynthesis use, you do not tell me green color, you tell me all the colors except green, since it's reflecting green. That's why it appears green to us. Okay, and this picture shows, or this graph shows the relative absorbance of three types of pigments found in plants. One is called chlorophyll A, one is chlorophyll B, and another pigment called carotenoid. Now these can be found with all three of them in the same plants or in different plants, and this shows the absorbance of them. And here is the wavelengths, which define which colors are absorbed, which colors of the visible light. The visible light colors are, of course, the rainbow colors from violet to red. So, if you look at the graph of chlorophyll A, which is the dark green one, you see that it has high absorbance for the violet and for the blue colors, and then the orange and red. What does this mean? This means that chlorophyll A absorbs these, and for photosynthesis, to do the process of photosynthesis, it uses violet, blue, and orange, and red. What it does not use, as you can see here, which it does not absorb, are the blue, green, a bit of the blue, green, yellow colors. So what would this chlorophyll A look like to us? It will look like the colors that it does not use or it reflects. That's why chlorophyll A would look to us green to yellow, maybe a bit blue, but mostly green. And that's why all plants look green. Chlorophyll B is similar to chlorophyll A. It also has a high absorbance in violet and blue, and also in orange and red. So it also kind of looks green. These are just two types of chlorophyll. Now the carotenoid is a bit different. It's the orange graph, so you can see it has high absorbance over the violet, blue, the same, but it does not absorb the orange and the red. This is why some plants have reddish color, which is you can see some plants have leaves, and I've heard this from students before. It's not when it's fall and the leaves are falling. When it's fall and the leaves are falling, the leaves are dying and there's no more chlorophyll produced. That's why they look different color. No, the ones that have carotenoid, they look red because they have a lot of this pigment, which allows them to do photosynthesis the same way. Now to go to the steps of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis happens in two different steps. The first one is called light reaction. The second one is called Calvin cycle, or light independent reaction. This also might be called light dependent reaction. Okay. Anyway, if we draw the chloroplast here, of course this is an imaginary line I've put, and we would be having the thylakoids here, and let's say the stroma is here. Now of course the thylakoids are everywhere, but I'm just splitting it like this to make it easier to understand. In the light reaction, which happens in the membrane of the thylakoid, we will see it in details in the next video. First, sunlight is being used, H2O is being used, and H2O will be broken down to give out the oxygen to the outside of the atmosphere, H2O comes from the roots, the sunlight from the sun. The light reaction occurs to give two important molecules for the Calvin cycle. These important molecules will be the ATP, which is the energy molecule that you all know, and the NADPH. The NADPH is a molecule that is called an electron carrier. It carries an electron from here and it will deliver it in the Calvin cycle. This carrying of electron from one place to another gives energy to do some work, like provide energy for the cell, or as you will see in the details what it does exactly. So these two will be originated in the light reaction, will be given to the Calvin cycle. The Calvin cycle is a cycle, so it goes back to the first point that we start with. We'll see it in details in the next video. This Calvin cycle will take in CO2 from the atmosphere. This CO2, of course, it will take 6 CO2 molecules to make the main molecule we want to make, which is the glucose. So it's like just like Lego. You have 6 pieces and you want to join them to make one big piece, which is glucose, which we will use, which the plant will use for maybe energy or build-up of other cells, different things. To build this out of these molecules, you need energy. The energy comes from the light reaction, ATP and ADPH that come from here. When after the use of ATP, you all know that ADP is released, which is like the empty battery, and the same with NADPH. After it's the use or the delivery of the electron, NADP plus will be produced. Now these, where will they go? They will go back to the light reaction to be recharged into ATP and ADPH to be used here. So the purpose of the first step, which is the light reaction, is to recharge these two molecules to be used in the Calvin cycle. And the Calvin cycle takes the CO2, builds glucose using these two high energy molecules, and the whole thing occurs in the chloroplast, in the membranes of the thylakoid for the light reaction, in the stroma, which is the fluid around them, for the Calvin cycle. This is also called light independent reaction, but it's actually dependent on this, because this cannot run without this, because it needs these two high energy molecules. This is the overview of photosynthesis. I'll post another video which explains light reaction in details, what happens here, and Calvin cycle in details, what exactly happens here that enables us to make these. This is the video for the overview of photosynthesis. I hope this will be helpful for you, and thank you.